We could push on individual efforts. You know, I remember we talked at the beginning about maybe today I'll sit with medical and I'm custody, let's say, or maybe today I'll volunteer to do the medical escort. But the individual efforts, it doesn't carry enough strength. How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Hey guys, this is a very important topic. We have to start bringing our custody and our non-uniform staff together. Reason why it's important, guys, is because it compounds our effectiveness. Ultimately, not even just with each other, but for the agency, for the mission. And believe it or not, a lot of us share the same values. So me and Connie have been having this great discussion, and I've had some influence by my best friend, TR. TR knows who she is, so she's watching it. Thank you. Because the later idea came to me from her. It was a great suggestion. I'm like a generalist, I believe. So I just kind of just apply things generally, but it's great to have someone like Connie or TR to say, okay, but how is this going to specifically apply here? And that's where it gets the motors running. But guys, this is a very important dialogue because, again, if we work together, it compounds our chance to be effective on all levels. So it's a great dialogue, a needed dialogue. And in the end, don't we want a better working environment? I mean, I think so. And I think that's what part of my mission is now, is to try to, me and Connie try to build that bridge, try to, get us working together as one. So neither parties suffer from, as Connie would say, role ambiguity. It used to be about civilians. They usually have that role ambiguity. But now I believe because the corrections are shifting, I think custody doesn't know where they play now, where their role is. And I think they're starting to go through role ambiguity. So these videos are an effort to kind of define that role. Now, guys, got 3 sponsors. Get a chance, please check out American Military University if you're looking to get that higher level education, bring experience back in the classroom. American Military University is a great online school. They've been supporting me since day one, but a more important thing is they support the field of corrections, the staff, what we do. So thank you, American Military University. Again, guys, get a chance, check it out. We also have Guardian RFID. They're also a big supporter of our profession, as well as my channel. From inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. And by the way, guys, Guardian RFID also has a YouTube channel, so please get a chance, check it out. And we also have the RAP, controlling combative subjects quickly in an upright position so they can breathe has never been more important. Departments such as Washington, D.C., L.A. County, San Diego County, and hundreds of other facilities across the U.S. trust and believe in the RAP, W-R-A-P, restraint. Go to saferestraints.com for contact information and mention Tier Talk for instructor training at no cost. Lower liability for your facility and your personnel with the RAP. Give the RAP a call today, 800-WRAP-911. I'm familiar with the RAP is. It's okay. Gotcha. Link to a video in the description here that will show you exactly what the RAP is. So, guys, this is going to be a very good dialogue. Basically, we're going to be talking about, in general, expanding our circle. So let's get Connie, because this is also Connie's expertise. If you guys don't know who Connie is by now, then you're not watching this channel. Connie, I just like to, introduce her because I actually am very familiar with her work. Great podcast, guys. Get a chance to check it out. I'm not going to say no jokes. And she also has a great book on the market called The Cage Was Her Cocoon, which I hear is doing very well. And from what I'm hearing, it changes lives. Connie. What's up, Connie? Are you muted, Connie?
Oh, my.
Now, wait, can I just tell you something? Hold on. I just bragged about you. I said how developed you are, and you're a podcast host. You should know how to work a mic.
Oh, come on. Give me a break. It's a Friday night. It's been a long
yeah, thank you, by the way. Thank you. Friday she's working overtime, off schedule today.
It's exactly that too, right? See, he even acknowledges it. I appreciate your acknowledgement.
I know.
Oh gosh. Hi everybody. Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I am also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall and the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. So many things are happening right now just in life. It's an exciting time, but I think it gets even better when I get to talk about what I love and, really get to see how these dialogues that we have are actually impacting people's careers and impacting the way they decide to engage in the facility. So it's definitely a good time, and I always enjoy it. So thanks for having me again. I don't think you can get rid of me though.
I'm not looking to get rid of you, Connie. I'm waiting for you to tell me it's your final episode. But I need you, so I don't care how big you get. You said you'll always, come down and talk to me on Tier Talk.
Cut it out.
Guys, yesterday I was happy. The other day we did a show, I was happy. Check out the video. I kind of went off script a couple of times. But today I'm sensitive. So I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on with me. But definitely, I really want to get this topic across. I couldn't wait until Connie understood the passion behind it. So she's like, of course, Gangi, it's Friday. I got family, but what the fuck? So sacrifices we make. But guys, the reason why we do this topic is I do feel it's important. So it's kind of all relates to us expanding our circle. So I'm going to start off real quick before we get into the 5 tips, because it is going to be about 5 tips. The reason why I'm saying expanding our circle is technically, even on a personal life, we should always do that. The more you expand your circle, the more resources you have. So like if I have friends, maybe it's good for you to know who their friends are, because you start building out these resources. So expanding your circle isn't always a bad thing, because it could get you some really good resources. So I'm kind of relating this and making this the topic of our show, because when you think about it, in corrections, that's what we need to do. We need to expand our circle and increase our resources. And the reason why I wanted to have this dialogue is I was reading a book by John Maxwell called The 360-Degree Leader. So basically being a leader all around. And he said something to me that resonated with me, which is, if your departments don't get along, now mind you, he's talking from a business angle, but guys, stuff still applies here. Connie could explain that too as well, from having both the business and the criminal justice side. If your departments don't get along, your departments, even if they're effective, they're not where they could be. So think about that. So whatever you think that they are doing that's effective, it's not where it could be, because he's talking about when people start working together, we start to multiply. We start to have a very compounding effect. And what kind of made the motivation behind this, or the passion right now, is in my job, I'm lucky enough to have a lot of committees. And a lot of these committees are basically meant to help the facility come together. What I realized recently during these committees is that I may know all my players on this committee. And I know their value and their importance. And I love them. Right off the bat, I love them. But they don't know each other. And to me, that's shocking, because they're on the floor with them every day. They only see me once in a blue moon. But they're on the floor with them every day, and they don't know each other. And I'm thinking like, wow, if these people have brought value to me, and, in the moments I can see them, which ain't as many as they see each other, imagine the value that they can have with each other on that amount of time that they can see each other. But Connie, let's talk about the importance of, just in general, the topic before we get into the 5 tips. But how important is it for us as an agency to have those people on, in this profession, to try to expand their circle?
So I think that we know already that division makes us vulnerable, right? So when there is that division between, custody, civilian, or even between the school and medical, or the school or programs and medical, like wherever there's division, it is a place where there is a gap, where that gap can be filled with whatever, right? And so it makes us vulnerable. So as we think about it from a broader perspective, we know that there's strength in numbers, right? But how do I trust the person next to me when I don't know them? I've never spoken to them. I've never engaged with them. I don't know what their skill set really is. It's very difficult to have that blind faith, that blind trust. And so I think in the context of our conversation, what it's become really evident that we could be working with whoever, right? But if we don't ever take the time to establish a relationship with that person, a working relationship with that person, we may never get to a point where we truly trust the people that we work side by side with, and so that lack of trust, and it also feeds sort of this feeling where you don't feel like you belong, like where you're not part of the team. And when you're not feeling like part of the team, or you feel like a guest, you behave like a guest, right? If you feel like an outsider, you behave like an outsider. And I think when we start to put those words and terms with it, like it really puts us in a space where we're putting people on an island. Some people are feeling excluded for some reason, whatever reason, and those exclusions make people feel as though they're not part of the team. And so whatever happens, or whatever the big mission is, the big mission has nothing to do with me because I'm not part of the team. And we just can't, if we don't have the luxury, I think, of excluding anybody at this time where we're struggling to retain staff, we're struggling to recruit staff. Like, we got to make the most of everyone who's on site.
Right. And guys, when it comes to expanding our circle, before we get to the 5 tips, that means that we have to break out of our comfort zone, which is sort of what Connie's saying as well. We have to be intentional with it. Reading a John Maxwell book, I love this scenario where an elastic band is useless until it's stretched. So basically that's what we're trying to get at. In order for us to do this, it has to be intentional. Now, when we talk about the 5 tips that's going to come your way, there's a lot of people involved. We have to make the effort as front line, yes, but management also has to create an environment where it's not only allowed, but there's a belief in the importance of that. Again, the value that could be exchanged and how it could be effective. And there's ways to promote that. And the funny thing is, guys, is how it's effective is when you start seeing the outcomes happening and then being able to put the outcome back on whatever it is that's causing that, like a committee that's made of multiple different departments. Once you start showing those outcomes that are being determined or being, once you see those outcomes that are happening because of that committee, sorry guys, once you see those outcomes that are happening because of those committees, you can't deny the fact that if we work together as one, there's so many things that we, can accomplish at a greater level. So that's why when I start to see where we could be, it makes me question why we're not. So this is, again, another reason why you want to have this dialogue. And some people may say, okay, well, this may not apply to me. I'm more concerned about this, which tends to be more myopic or more departmental. Guys, this does apply to us because it makes us so effective in so many ways, including being a voice for each other. So in the end, building this bridge does have an outcome, and it has an outcome of we're united with one voice and we're not separated. Right now, we're just in silos. So the first thing I want to talk about, and kind of touches into the topic where I talk about expanding our circle, expanding your inner circle. Guys, you ever notice that when your inner circle is limited? Now, guys, I know we have our trusted circle. Trust and believe, I see when people are eating, they're eating with the people from their same department, talking about their same departmental concerns. And I get it. We're familiar with each other. We frequent each other more, and I get it. It's comfortable for us to sit at that same table, talk to the same people, talk about the same issues. It's harder to, maybe today I'm not going to sit with custody. I'm going to go sit at that medical table. That's hard. I remember being in school, having the groups. It takes initiative for that one person to say, you know what, I'm going to go sit at this table today.
Can different I be a devil's advocate for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you said that, you made me think about breaking bread with people is such like, it's like such a personal thing. And so like, I agree that, stepping out of your comfort zone is something, but I would just, I was struggling a little bit with like, wow, it's hard to decide you're going to break bread with people that you don't really know, especially when you just have like a few minutes to just get your lunch down. But, that's just something I struggled with a little bit when you mentioned it. You're like, yeah, I got my lunch. I might go sit with medical. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, listen, I get it. I'm kind of using a very general scenario, but it is to paint a picture. And I like the fact that you talked about, is it uncomfortable? It is.
Yeah,
it is. It's very uncomfortable. But in the end, if it works, you're expanding that circle. I know sometimes we have individuals that, let's say I'm in my office and I'm working with my secretaries, and I have an officer that may come in and say, hey, is secretary such and such here? And like, no, they're not here. They're out for a week. Okay, I'll come back next week. But I have 2 other secretaries, because we get so, when we come to our inner circle, guys, I'm not talking about inner circle of, trust is earned. I get it. but I'm talking about people that could be considered a resource first so they can earn that trust. Because I get it. When I see in a circle, I don't know them. I can't just trust, but it starts somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It starts by stretching out into that uncomfortable moment, where you make that connection, then you build a resource, and then eventually you do start to build the trust. But sometimes we get stuck in what we already have that we don't tend to look around. So I do believe that us now kind of relating this principle to working in corrections, we kind of limit ourselves to just our departments, thinking that our departments are pretty much the ones that can answer all our concerns, and they're the ones that deal with the most concerns. Where it's very me, because we keep ourselves in me. We work ourselves in silos. We're not having dialogues with those other departments to see that's really not a me, it's a we, and what you're going through is sort of what we're going through. But instead, we just more focus on our departments and kind of like a little bit of a selfish perspective, instead of just kind of stretching out of that comfort zone. And instead of us talking about only custody issues to people that only know about custody issues, we wind up stretching out and talking to people that, have similar issues, just not this, maybe not custody oriented, but somewhere along the line, there's some similarities, because in the end, we all work in the same environment. So Connie, expanding your inner circle, building the trust, because technically it's that trust, but I think for this part, it's expanding your inner circle to identify resources. Are we not doing that?
So I don't know that we're necessarily doing that. I think that there are times where, an incident might happen, or, something new comes across your desk, and you might be forced to reach out of your comfort zone, to reach out of the medical. Oh man, I gotta call custody because I don't know the answer. We don't know the answer internally. And then when you finally connect with someone, it's like, oh, okay, you realize that, like, oh, this person is a good resource to have. But I don't know that outside of some sort of work related happening that we would actually naturally do that. So the fact that we're talking about being intentional about expanding your circle, about reaching out to other departments, even if it's just to figure out what do they do? What do they do? And that way, if you come across a situation, you now have more tools in your chest to be able to say, oh yeah, I talked to that person in programs, or I talked to that person over there in, I don't know, classifications, and this person was really helpful. Because what also happens when you do that is that you become the resource that knows where all the other resources are. Right? Like, oh, Connie, do you know somebody over there who could help me with this thing? Right? And I feel like being that personality or that person who's not afraid to come out their comfort zone, to reach into another department, to understand what's happening in another department, and to be able to say, like, oh, would you mind if I call you if things like this come up in the future? Right? Like, what are they going to say? No, don't call me. No, they're going to say, sure, why not? But that's how you build that relationship. And then, like, somebody's trying to figure out something about medical, that same person could be like, oh, hey, why don't you call Connie? I spoke to her the other day, and, she had all this information. Like, that's how we start to change the culture of not stepping outside of the circle.
Yes. And Connie, by the way, I mean, we were having this discussion when we were driving home, and, I just, to know that there's so much value, that it's not even so much about where I want us to be. It's just, why aren't we there already? That's why it's so passionate. I feel like once I discovered this and reading this and figuring out how to apply it, and then talking to you and talking to TR, it gets me so frustrated, because we're keeping ourselves back. I mean, if we could just kind of pull past this, we could skyrocket. I feel like, we're ready to go, but the longer we kind of stay where we're at, the longer that people don't take these dialogues as serious, then we wind up being our own worst enemy. So the first thing we get with expanding your inner circle was, again, the resources. And Connie touched into something that's actually the next part. Expand beyond your expertise. Guys, I know this for a fact. When I was an officer, you're surrounded by other officers and other supervisors that they think they know everything. And maybe they do, but they don't realize that their perspective is not as big as they would like it to be, or they think it is. So they may think they know everything, which I always doubt. It's corrections. But where are you looking from? Like, how high up are you? This is not a profession that is about a destination. It's a journey. It's something you constantly learn at. And, even if you reach, I'm going to be a supervisor, that's my goal. Okay. But it's not a goal oriented profession. It's a growth oriented profession. We do it every day, and we learn something new no matter what position it is. I'm on the administrative level. I still learn every day, and I'm learning from the highest level. I just see bigger things. But if I kept myself to that one perspective of just being an officer without looking to the left or right, then my expertise is going to be very limited. And the sad thing is, I'm not going to know it's limited. Mm-hmm. That's the sad thing, is I'm not going to know, because again, I'm not taking my time to look to see what's to the left and right of me. I'm just so myopic. And I think that's another part of how dangerous it could be when you're not kind of building that bridge. Because the sad thing is if I'm only looking this way and not really looking to the left or right, then how do I know what I'm doing is really for the agency or for the mission? Am I really being effective for what the agency expects? Or am I only being effective for maybe my department, or only being effective for me at the end? So I think the key about learning or expanding beyond your expertise is because it gives you a chance to have that dialogue with individuals. And Connie will get into this too, but to build that understanding, which brings about respect. But again, we have to be willing to stretch. But Connie, let's talk about expanding beyond your expertise. What does that mean? I mean, when you were a civilian, at first, are things myopic when you're trying to learn a department? And do you see people actually making an effort to look to see what's on the left and right of their departments?
So I think it depends on the role that you come in with, right? So I came in as a discharge planner, and that's sort of, I guess, equivalent to our reentry right now. And it is certain roles, as much as you need to focus and learn your role, you also can't do that in a vacuum, right? Like, so if I'm planning someone's discharge, there's no way I could just have my head down and not know, okay, what are his charges? What programs would he be eligible for or ineligible for? And where would I get that information other than building a relationship with custody in order to get it, right? Does this person have a substance abuse issue or problem, right? Do I need to step into mental health in order to figure this out? Do I need to step into medical to figure this out? Are they a part of some sort of internal program? Like, so on Rikers, we had the KEEP program. Do I need to go reach out to the KEEP program to figure out whether or not they could be a part of that program? And so I think it's sometimes your role is, in order for you to be effective, you have to step out and expand your expertise and understand what all these other departments are doing around you so that you can do your job effectively. Now, I think that there may be some roles like, if, I just work this unit, this is the only unit I work, there may be, a way for you to sort of block out the world, right? Because everything that you deal with is contained, and you control what comes in and out of that unit. But the inmates come up with so many issues that I think no matter where you are, you need to be able to be that traffic director, right? Oh, this is where you need to go to get this. This is where you need to go to get that. This is where you need to go to get the third. And I feel like when you don't have the capacity to expand your expertise, it also limits what you're able to troubleshoot and control on your own without having to escalate everything, right? Like, oh, let me go to my supervisor because I don't know X, Y, or Z. I think naturally there are going to be some things that just are beyond your scope. Maybe you just don't know, you just weren't exposed to it. But I think there are some everyday things that we have to be better about reaching into other groups just to understand what they do. And really, dare I say that we're essentially providing a service, right, to these inmates. You come to the desk asking me for this thing. I mean, sure, I could say, I don't know, go back to your, go about your business, right? But like that doesn't stop the inmate from coming back, right? But if I say, oh, hey, you have to speak to Captain so and so, or you've got to go to, drop a slip, and this person, they'll get back to you within a week or two. Like, I think that's when that you're kind of, I don't want to say you're the master of your universe, but you begin to master your universe because you know where you need to go for the things you need to maintain control.
Right. And guys, by the way, it's very important that leadership also listens to this, because they got to create the environment that's going to encourage this. Because if you have somebody that's willing to do this and make this effort, we need encouragement to keep them going, because it's going to be the culture shock and they're going to create momentum. But guys, I mean, we got to create environments, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But the one other thing I want to mention about expanding your expertise before we get to the next part is, if you don't, you kind of put a lid on yourself. So if you're ever looking to be a supervisor, you got to realize something. Again, it's not about the goal, it's about the journey. So the moment you decide that, okay, I made it, I'm going to stop learning, then everybody beneath you stops learning as well. So like if you have the chance to be a 10 and you stop learning at a 5, then everybody beneath you becomes a 4. And that's a choice that you make as a leader. So you have to keep on doing what you can to expand your expertise. And that does go way beyond your departments. It goes to kind of understanding the bigger picture of what it's about. Now, also, I want to just give a shout out. Someone asked for a shout out, or yeah, I guess you could say they asked for a shout out. I'm just going to kind of randomly say a name here. Samantha Kaufman. Connie, can you say hi to Samantha Kaufman? She says she watches our whole episodes.
Hi, Samantha. How are you?
Right, there you go. So now you have to watch the episode, Samantha, and then you're going to put in the comment exactly what time we said your shout out.
Oh, my God.
Yes, I'm being specific. If you want a shout out, you got to show me you watch more than 26 minutes of the show. Sorry, guys. We're talkers. Okay, so, guys, the cool thing about this, and they kind of bleed into it, is once you expand on your expertise, you also expand beyond your strengths. Because, again, you know what's funny, guys? I don't think, because some of us do have a very limited perspective of what the agency provides, because I get it. We're so focused into what we need to do on an individual level and then connect that to what we need to do on a departmental level, that by the time we get to what we need to do on an agency level, we're already, multiple steps, removed. So I get it. It's the individual, the department. I'm sure there's a couple other things. And then there's the agency. I'm assuming, I don't know, I'm guessing. But guys, the more you expand your expertise, the more you expand beyond your strengths, because the funny thing is that there's so many different things that this agency provides that you may not even realize where your strengths are until you open up the mind to other possibilities of what this profession has to offer. And it literally does involve some communication with the different departments to get an understanding of what is the bigger picture and where can I play this role. One of the things about me is, as I moved up, I realized that, man, a lot of the stuff I've been thinking about really only helps one department. So as they put me on the civilian side of things, I said, hey, you know what? I got to do stuff that benefits us at all levels, because I never let go of the custody perspective, but I have to be fair. They gave me civilians now. So what can I do now to expand things for them? Because I had to kind of evolve. Never forgetting, I said evolved. I didn't say change. I said evolve, which means that how do I take the foundation I have and grow? Because that's the key, grow. So now I got this whole other avenue here that I have to now invest time into as well. So then I start looking back at the stuff I'm doing. I'm like, man, everything I've been talking about, the civilians could use this too. Even something as our phrase is of being firm, fair, and consistent. We live by that. Civilians never heard of that. So I'm thinking like all these values that we could give to each other that we don't, because we don't communicate. And having said that, that communication makes us stronger because it opens up our eyes to see other things. So when it comes to expanding beyond your strengths, I take that as allowing yourself to be open to the value that others can give you. And that value comes from those other departments and us working together. Connie, when we're talking about expanding your strengths, what's your thoughts on that?
So I'm just thinking growth is a two-way street, right? Like if you come to the table and you're prepared to grow, I feel that the exchange of information is really what is going to facilitate that growth in the moment, right? Like, and I think the being open is one thing, but it's also understanding that if you never are challenged, right? Like your thoughts, your this is how we do things. And I'm not saying challenge just for the sake of challenge, right? Someone's being an asshole. I'm saying sometimes people can provoke thought, right? Just because it what they said made sense, right? This may not be what I usually do, but what they said makes sense. How does this work out practically if I started to do things differently, right? And so it is at that age old, you don't grow without challenge, right? Like they say, like people who work out, right, and they're building muscle, right? The muscle doesn't get built if you don't ever increase your weights, right? So if you're always with 5 pounds, 5 pounds, the repetition is going to give you some muscle memory. You're probably going to have some strength. But like if you're building muscle, you have to get heavier weights and gradually over time. And I feel like that's kind of how we build our expertise, that gradually we step out of our comfort zones. Gradually we step into another department. We learn what they're doing in that department. You know, one day I remember sitting in my warden's office and I was talking to his secretary, and she was going through the list of stuff that I was like, holy crap, you do all of that as the secretary? Like, and I didn't mean it in like a demeaning way, but the list of stuff that she did, it was just so enormous. And so I gained such a major appreciation for her, but also I gained an understanding of why sometimes if you call up there, the phone is ringing, ringing, ringing. It's not because she's just la, 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 not doing anything. It's because she's got a laundry list of responsibilities to get achieved within any given day. And so I think it's the same thing as we think about expanding into other groups, right? Like when I came into custody, I thought I didn't need to know what officers did. I'm like, that has no relevance to discharge planning. Even as I went through medical, I started going through medical. It became more relevant. I was like, oh, this is what you guys need to be working together for, right? Like, you know, like it begins to make sense, but you've got to expose yourself to other things and other people and other perspectives, other departments, because those are the things that are going to challenge you to think a little differently. It's like you're incorporating just another piece of data, right? And what does that data do to your system? It either kind of blends well and no, it doesn't change anything you think because this is how I operate. Or it kind of things come to a little halt for a second because now you got to figure out where to put this piece of information, right? And sometimes where to put that piece of information can completely revolutionize the way you do something. So, you know, that's how I feel about expanding that expertise.
Hey, I want to add on one more thing because you kind of touched on something I like. Let me be careful how I said that. You touched on something that I found was relevant. Yeah. Awkward. Awkward. Sorry, Connie. No, you know what? But I'm passionate, guys, today. I'm passionate. You know what's funny, guys? When it comes to expanding your strength, I love what Connie said, so I'm going to kind of feed off on something I think matters. Working together gives us an understanding of what each other's role is. So I'm thinking of like a code where it involves multiple departments. When we don't understand what each other's role is, we don't understand where our position really is, and we're not as effective as we could be. It's understanding where our position is next to the people that we have to work with that really does make us truly effective, because the positions, they kind of bleed into each other, right? So the stronger we become is because we understand our position in the bigger picture, right? If that makes any sense, because we understand where our position is, where we can maneuver, where our boundaries are, and we just become less hesitant because we know more, and we just become that more effective. There was a story I read about a basketball team in their practices. And if you guys, I don't watch sports, I'm just reading some books on leadership. And they talked about the basketball team had a starting five and a string, what we call a secondary five, people on the bench. So after the game, the starting five were always the best players. So the coach would have the starting five go against the bench, the next set of five that's on the bench. But when the starting five had to play against those at the bench, they couldn't play them in their normal positions. So if you were a guard, you're now a center. If you were a center, you are now a guard. And when they weren't in that position, they lost to the second string. So I'm thinking like, wow, that makes sense. But the only way you understand where your position is in this agency is by knowing where everybody else is around you. Mm-hmm. So having said that, understanding that position makes you that much more effective, makes you that much more
agile.
Agile. I like that. I know you're going to want to touch on some of the thoughts I just said because I mentioned basketball. You like basketball, Connie?
Yes, I played basketball.
Yes, I remember. See? You see? I remember that because I think I heard you say something on one of the podcasts I wasn't on. I forget.
Oh my gosh.
There it is. No, but Connie, but I think the position is important, right? And how that position relates to the other players.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, in order for you to be a good player, right? Like you've got to be able to read the court. You've got to know what's going on in the game. And I feel that's the same thing with, working in the facilities. If you don't know what's going on in the facility, it's hard for you to read where you would be most effective, right? It's hard for you to play your position and to play it well and to be of assistance to the other players, right? So the rest of custody, the rest of the civilians, they're all our teammates, right? And how do I give you an assist if I don't know what you're doing? I don't know where you need me to be in order to be supportive of you, in order for us to kind of get to that final end game, right? We're all trying to win, right? And what does that look like if you're a one-man show, right? How do you accomplish that when you don't have your team to give you assists? When you don't have anyone to sub you out, right? Like, because I've never trained on that post, so I don't know how to do that job. I never did this thing, so I can't be a stand-in. I think about in medical, we used to rotate the nurses through different posts so that if you were a nurse in medical, you knew how to work in mental health, you know how to draw blood, you know how to run the chronic care clinic. And we would rotate people through so that no one was ever burnt out in one position. No one was ever feeling like they couldn't take a break because no one else knew how to do their job. And I feel like, that's one of the things one of the things that we gain when we start to build that expertise. We start to expand that expertise that all of us can support each other. We can all sub for each other. Now that you've got my brain in sports, or we can all assist, right? Because the assists are just as important as making the basket, and I feel like the more that we learn how people are doing their jobs, the more that we can be of support. We may not necessarily be able to go take over their role because that's just not the reality of where we are. But at least I know in the course of doing the work I'm doing, any decision that I'm going to make right here that could possibly impact your department, at least I know that it's going to happen. And I could always reach back out to you and say, hey, I did this, we're putting this guy in this placement, for example, but he has an arson charge. That charge usually impacts a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Just like if there was like a sex offense charge, it impacts a whole bunch of other stuff. And so I kind of feel like it is us building and expanding those expertise, the areas of expertise that will allow us to be most effective.
And think about it, if we're playing at our best, not only do we achieve, but we also achieve things for the team. I'm not being selfish here, guys. Wanting to be your best helps the team, which ultimately helps the agency. I don't know if you guys noticed before when Connie was speaking, my wife brought down another water. Now, yesterday.
I didn't hear you say thank you.
Well, I was muted. I just want to mention something. So, in yesterday's episode, my wife had to get me some water. I asked. I was thirsty. I was doing the show, but talk a lot, so my mouth goes dry. So Connie made a wild assumption yesterday that my wife just takes the initiative to get me water. which she doesn't, guys. It's a lot of texts and, a lot of begging and pleading. But I was able to use what Connie did yesterday to my advantage to get my wife to bring me down a water in less than 3 texts. So basically, it only took 2 texts. I'm sorry. Babe, can I have a water? No reply back. Please. Connie thinks you do this automatically, so don't let her down. She believes in you more than me. And and guess what, guys? She gave me the water. She didn't do it for me. Oh, so let me just thank you, Connie.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
Huh? I'm gonna tell her.
Yeah, I know. You probably have her number by now too. Talking on the side. We only talk prison talk, but I'm sure you guys are talking about me. Concerns about me. So the last 2 parts, guys. This is going to be a little bit of a more deeper discussion. This is where the next 2 parts are going to kind of touch on the environment. So I got to get management involved in this, but really a lot of individual intentional effort. I want to have Connie, because it's only fair at this point, to jump into this one first so I can feed off her thoughts. And then I'll jump into the last one first and we'll feed off each other's thoughts. But this is expand beyond your personal prejudices. And when I thought of this, Connie, real quick, I thought about how we view the departments. I always think about that story when I was an officer, and there could have been an officer that one day that called me a social worker, and I'm sitting there like, I'm not a social worker, and I took it as an insult. But then later on, as I evolved, I worked next to them, and it's like, hey, you know what? I didn't realize the time when I was saying that how insulting that really is. They're dedicated too. It's just that they have a different mission, and I get it now. But also the generalizations, the stereotypes that lead to us, because maybe of one person, we stay clear of all departments. I go, instead of saying it's Gangi, it's admin, or instead of saying it's Connie, it's medical. Let's talk about that. Kind of expand beyond your personal prejudices. How important is this when it comes to bridging that gap, and who plays the role in this? Frontline management, a combination of both?
So I think this is critical, but I think, so we have to take individual responsibility for our own biases and prejudices that hold us back from interacting with people that we don't know, right? I remember us trying to initiate some training, and I remember telling the staff, custody is going to be a part of this training. It was a mental health training. And they were like, why custody? Why? And, here it is in my infinite wisdom, right? I'm thinking custody sees the mental health population all the time. They're in the units. And here it is, we're dealing with advocates at our door complaining that we've got X amount of uses of force and they weren't justifiable and all this crazy. And so for me, it just made sense that custody would be a part of our in-service. That way they could identify when an inmate was decompensating and give us a heads up, right? Like we had social workers in and out the units all the time. What better way for custody to be like, hey, Connie, I've seen so-and-so and he looks a little odd, or this is what they're doing. I know that's a sign of decompensation, right? Like this is not saying they know everything. This is not saying their mental health, their social workers. It's not saying any of that. It is saying they have a framework to refer to in order to support whatever the mission is as it relates to managing the population more effectively. And so I think, one, individually, we have to put aside those biases and be open to the experience of getting to know each other and understand what each of us do, what our roles are, and sort of the bigger picture. Why is it important? But I think from a management perspective, we've got to create scenarios and situations where this can happen more organically, right? I'm not saying, hot dogs on Tuesday is the only way or the way, right? What I'm saying is there are ways that we build teams that are intentional and that allow us to see each other's skill sets, right? It allows us to communicate with each other, because I think that the building the relationship and the bridging the gap of like that trust comes from I worked side by side with this person on a project. I might have never otherwise worked with this person, but we were on the safety committee together, and this is what we did together. And I know that that person knows their stuff. I know that Connie knows her stuff. If I need to come to Connie for something, or if I need something, I know I could go to her because I've experienced her expertise firsthand. And I think it's not until we actually start being intentional as management, because I know we have to juggle over time. We got to juggle all these things, and we try to make sure that, you know, the facility is operating safely. But we also have to be intentional about finding time to get our staff together so that they can actually work together and in a meaningful way. Sometimes it's partnering on something, you know, sometimes it's training together. I mean, whatever it looks like in your facility, I just think we owe it to the staff to do that.
Yeah, and guys, what Connie just came up with now, I mean, even though we're able to kind of maybe wrap it up in 5 minutes at that point, this is a lifetime of experience we just gave you. I mean, from both ends. I mean, you may see us talk about something, even a show like this, maybe it runs an hour, whatever it is, but we're devoting a lifetime of experience into that hour and trying our best to be communicators. You know, I know John Maxwell says, you know, communicators, you know, we're different than educators. Educators make things more complicated. Communicators make things more easy. So we went through the education, and now we're communicating it downward so you guys can understand an effort to evolve. One of the things about the prejudice that I want to mention, because it does kind of cross into the last caveat, the last tip, is that we got to eliminate the it's on all levels, the stereotyping and the, you know, the judgment of a department based on maybe a few bad apples. I mean, sometimes, you know, let's say we have custody that does something foolish, and we get mad when everybody considers us that one negative character, that one negative custody member, or who, you know, who broke the rules, you know, and we're quick to be mindful. Hey guys, that's not all of us. Well, that applies also to everything that we do. You know, hey, I'm having a problem with Gangi, so screw all of admin. Guys, you're doing the same thing. You're stereotyping and you're destroying a department because of one person. Now, mind you, it is easier to do that. I get it. So if you're a bad apple, know for a fact that the way the world works, sometimes bad apples do ruin the bunch. So when you're being a fool, you got to realize something. This isn't just you. It's how people are going to view the position you're in. So be careful how you act. You know, make sure that what you're doing is in line with what you're supposed to be doing in these positions. You know, you're not supposed to be a leader and do things selfishly. You're supposed to know that I have a responsibility, and my responsibility is what's best for the team, not what's best for me. And therefore, if I act negative, is there a good chance that could affect my peers, my team, and how they view what we do? You know, so again, if you know, they tell us in custody that, you know, when you wear that uniform, you better be the best because you represent all of us. Well, that's the same for all departments. You know, if you have this one bad apple, let's say in medical, who is just, you know, just not a good person, management needs to get on her, because management's going to know, or get on him. Management's going to know. It's like, hey, got to watch, because this person is doing this in uniform, representing us. And that's why a lot of people say, well, why can't I go on TV in uniform? Because guys, if you do something foolish, you automatically get seen as a representation of everyone who wears that uniform. That's why we're so quick to say, hey guys, watch out for that. That person's not us. That person doesn't represent the best of us. So same thing here. If I saw that there was a custody member that, you know, it's just making it very difficult for the civilians to maneuver just because they're resistant and just, you know, in their ways, they're very aggressive and maybe even disrespectful, I have to address that, because my biggest concern now is that one person becomes how medical sees all the other custody members. Yeah. You know, so my job now is to make sure we don't get that stereotype, you know, to make sure that I do what I can. And even if that requires getting a supervisor after they deal with this officer to go back and, you know, build that faith back into us by telling the civilians, we took care of this, this is what happened, and we want to make sure you know that what the officer did, whatever, was unprofessional, and vice versa. You know, same thing happened with medical. I'm sure a medical supervisor would go to the staff and say, hey, listen, we took care of that person, because I've been on the other side of that. where medical is quick to say, hey, I know we had a bad apple, we took care of it. I want you to know this isn't what we tell our employees to do. And they do whatever they can to separate themselves from the bad apple so they can go ahead and motivate our connection. And I think that helps remove that prejudice, right, Connie? But that is an effort from us and management, correct?
Yeah, that is definitely an effort to sort of build that trust, because I mean, we already, kind of struggle to be trusted to I think there's a struggle to understand that, civilians can grasp the concepts of what's going on internal to facilities. I think a lot of time there is this thought that, civilians really just, they know their job, right? Leave the safety and security to us. And I think that's where we miss out on some great intel, because there's times where, just given like a little inkling of something, kind of raises the awareness. It's like, oh, this was mentioned in a meeting the other day, right? And sometimes it's just so random that you happen to encounter it. And now you've got intelligence that you can go share with custody. But when there's doubt that, what you have to say even matters, like, you're less likely to share it. So I absolutely feel that, we've got to be able to smooth things over. And at that point, it's not about the ego. It's about sort of, I don't want to say restoring the relationship, but trying to make sure you keep it intact.
Yes. And guys, this is an intentional effort. This is probably, out of all the points, this is probably the one thing that if we don't overcome, none of this matters. Yeah. So this obviously is one of the bigger points that we have to get across. Okay, the last spot I have here, which I think is actually the one I was most interested in, believe it or not, this is where I thought the pioneering part of it all is expand beyond your routine. So, well, you know what, even though I wanted to go first, let me get Connie's perspective on this first. I'm curious to see, because we did have a discussion on this briefly. What's your thoughts on when we say expand beyond your routine?
So I'm not going to touch on what you feel about it, because I think that that's something you should introduce, right? But I do feel that there is a way we can be intentional about the things we do every day, right? So maybe, for example, if typically someone's in a unit doing a group, and that civilian typically does her group or his group and walks out the door when they're done, the intentionality comes with, the group is done, let me go to the officer's desk and chat for a little bit, to maybe even talk about the group or something that happened in the group, not necessarily details about what inmate did or didn't do or what have you. But I think it is an intentional building of a relationship with someone who you work with. And if you see me come into your unit every day to do the group, you should probably know what I'm doing, right? You should probably know what I'm saying, and what better way than for me to actually talk to you about it. I think that helps break up sort of the monotony of how we engage or don't engage, right? Because that's usually it. Someone comes up to the door, they knock, officer opens the door to the unit, you go in, you go to your group room, the day room, whichever room you do your group in, you do your group for your hour or your 45 minutes to an hour, and then you go about your merry way, right? But how powerful is it that you would do the group, you'd have a conversation with the officer, and then the next time you come back, the officer asks you a question about the group, right? So in both situations, right, whether you're the person doing the group or the officer there, you both stepped out of your comfort zones, and you both have engaged each other in a way that you hadn't done in the past.
Yeah, that by the way, I think is phenomenal. I mean, when we were talking about this briefly, I was thinking of first an individual level, and then first what management can do. So the first thing I think we talked about a little bit at the beginning with management is I like those committees that have multiple players involved, and then you see the effect of what those committees have done, and then to kind of carry that momentum. I know, like, on committees I deal with, I may have a lieutenant and a civilian now working together, and then I'm going on the compound, and now they're talking. Before they didn't know each other. They knew each other from the committee, and the energy of the committee has now came onto the compound, and now you have two people talking to each other that normally wouldn't, and then other people are seeing it. And everybody seeing that it just has a lot of benefits, right? Because even the inmates see the partnership. That's something that has a lot of strength for us as custody, as civilians, as an agency. And then the other custody members, the other civilian members, they see this partnership. Plus, you have a lieutenant at this level. So now it opens up the door for people below that level to say, okay, hey, this is good. That's why, as a leader, you set the example. It opens up doors for people to follow. So always be careful with the example you set. But look at that. That's a good example. It opens up a door because of your position. So it's the higher the position at first, the better, because it helps with that momentum. So again, management can set up these committees that involve like this universal perspective, from the different departments. And then we do what we can to show that committee is effective. I mean, we really work with the voice of the different departments at this one committee. And then we look to see if we can carry that out into the facility and kind of keep that momentum going. And maybe one day you get 5 volunteers, the next day you get 10, 15. But it really matters if that committee is productive. I'm going to be honest with you. If the committee's not productive, this doesn't work. And it's true.
People are going to be like, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, it's true. Like, I mean, we're not having a committee for the sake of a committee. We're having a committee because they're going to be discussing things, and then what gives weight to what they're doing is the outcomes that we're able to help as management for them to succeed. So again, and by the way, these outcomes that help all departments. Mm-hmm. So eventually you start building that trust, and then you start seeing, wow, this committee really works. Why? Because we have a lot of different perspectives here, and now we're coming together as one. So it opens up just that dialogue, which then I hope carries some momentum out into the compound, and then you just start seeing this connection. We've done things like, having like shared interests, like Connie had said, hot dogs and stuff, or maybe food trucks, people that kind of share some commonalities, and we kind of try to build people together based on those commonalities. I mean, I would love to think that we share the same belief in the mission and stuff like that. I just think we interpret it differently. So in order for us to kind of get to that point where the mission becomes a commonality that we all share, we have to find other commonalities that open up that route to get to that one point. So
I like your softball one. I think that's great.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that. Thanks. I was thinking of that. So a lot of companies, a lot of managers, supervisors, leaders, they may do softball games, but they invite everybody. It's not a departmental thing. It's not like, custody's game or social services game. It's everybody together, pick a team, however it is. And there's going to be a lot of people that may be hesitant at first, because I've been invited to these events sometimes, and I get a little hesitant until one day someone caught me and I really didn't have an excuse. And I said, you know what? I'm being honest. It is what it is. You got to be an open mind, and we all learn. And I'm glad I didn't have an excuse. And I had my daughter with me. I brought her, and it was the best time ever. I don't know what my reservations were prior, because I can't even remember why I was saying no. All I know is I went to this event and I saw everybody there, custody, civilians. They were all mixed together. There were no uniforms. Everybody was dressed down, and we just celebrated us, because in the end we represented the house in such a beautiful way, and it brought us all together. I'm saying, man, if that could only exist behind the wall, and then when you go back to work, everybody's in their separate functions, and the momentum doesn't continue, because maybe the event's only once a year. It's not enough. Right. It's not enough. You got to keep the momentum going. And again, I know it's possible, because if I see it on the outside, then obviously I know it exists on the inside. And guys, there were no cliques. I mean, this was just a beautiful event that was well planned, and everybody was just together. And then you go back to work, and everybody goes back into these isolated silos. So
could it be that we haven't made it as leaders? We haven't made it safe to not be in a silo, right? Like, so outside, when we're outside an outside event, we feel free to engage each other and to not be in a silo. But is it that we've created a culture internal to facilities where people only feel comfortable to go back into their corners?
Well, see, okay, so that's the thing. That's why I put this first part on management. I think that's a great part. Hey, Connie, do me a favor. Can you just explain that a little? Because I agree with you 100%, but I don't know if people on the outside are going to get that. Do you mind explaining that really quick from your perspective?
So, I mean, I just see it as outside, everyone feels free to be themselves, right? Everybody feels free to engage. There's no title, there's no rank, there's no nothing, there's no ego outside. We're playing softball, we're having fun, right? And so that is the culture of outside. That is the culture of a baseball game, a softball game, but, I'm just thinking internal to facilities, have we created a culture, an environment where even if it's not the expectation, the staff feel that they have to go into their respective corners and that they can't let their hair down and that they can't, they can't, I can't be your friend. I'm in medical, your custody. Like, have we created that? Have we put the line in the sand? And now we're saying we want you guys to blur that line and work together. I don't know.
Yes, but right. So I think the biggest hiccup with that is, guys, it's our own peers. I think even if management did set the environment, there'll be people that will question it. They will peer pressure those to break away from it or whatever it is. That's why I'm very big on saying we need people to carry that right momentum, that right message. My concern is you could always get management on board somehow. Trust me, we'll make it happen. But it's the peers that's harder to control because, again, it's live, it's on site, it's there. And, if I'm new, I'm looking for approval. Who am I looking to? I'm looking to my right and left, the people that are right next to me. And sometimes, especially when you're new, it's for every little action. And if you're stuck in the old ways, you're just resistant to begin with. So I think the biggest obstacle with this, Connie, really is the peers and, trying to maintain that message. That's why you also need a person of influence. A person of influence out there being able to create that message and keeping that momentum going. Because, again, guys, this is something that has to be maintained. It's not just, we're gonna have a baseball game and, guys, everything has to serve a function. That baseball game that I went to served a beautiful thing. It was just beautiful. But I want the message to continue. I want the beauty to go on and continue. I don't want the beauty just to be that one moment and die out. I want it to continue. So when you have that momentum, you got to get right back on it and keep it going and keep it going and just kind of maintain that really good community. Now, me and Connie were having a little bit of discussion and we were trying to figure out the routine. Changing the routine to me was such a great idea. I believe it's in the John Maxwell book, 360 Leadership. And it was such a great idea. And I said, I know this applies to us. I just can't figure it out. And this is kind of what me and Connie do a little bit. And also TR. TR does the same. We get these theories that we read that no one has the balls to put into our profession. And we do what we can to say, okay, I know this works somewhere. How do we make it work? So we're just we want to move now the general idea to something specific. And there's magic in there. So this was kind of kicking me a little bit all day. And me and Connie were kind of going back and forth. And we went to thinking about, can you force people into things? Of course not. I mean, we don't want to do that. I mean, I know sometimes you force and people could change their minds, but it's tough here. I mean, if people have a mindset set, that's just, I don't think that's a good idea. We could push on individual efforts. I remember we talked at the beginning about maybe today I'll sit with medical and I'm custody, let's say, or maybe today I'll volunteer to do the medical escort. But the individual efforts, it doesn't carry enough strength. So me and TR were talking, and she came up with this idea. Now, mind you, TR's background's in programming. So one of the programs that they deal with, kind of like a peer navigator. And basically, in short, is, right now, we're both kind of lost in our roles in corrections. I mean, I believe that civilians know where their place is. They know they got to do rehabilitation. They get that, but they don't know kind of like, how does that work in a prison setting? And they look for guidance, right? They do. They're coming into a prison setting. I know what my purpose is. How do I apply it here? And the reason why I know that exists is because I'll be interviewing people and they're great candidates. And one of the questions at the end is, I never worked in a prison before. How does this work? So I know when I'm done with that dialogue, they're not going to know everything. They're going to have to go into the world and, I'm hoping that they do connect with, yes, some familiar peers, of course, people that are in from their apartment, but I want custody to have an influence on that too, because there is that safety and security level that should come from custody. But now with that said, because corrections has shifted, we also have custody trying to figure out what their role is. What do I do now, Gange? It goes beyond safety and security. We got to rehabilitate. What's reentry? All this other stuff. So she mentioned a peer navigator system where you have people that come in new to the profession and they're assigned a peer from the opposite department. So if I'm a civilian, then I'm assigned a peer from custody that I know automatically is my resource no matter what I go through. I can call this person. They're my assigned peer. They're going to help navigate me through this mess. Vice versa too, because of the change and custody knowing, okay, there's some part of programming here, whatever it is. Now I have someone I can go to. Yep. Someone that I can click on to get that understanding, that perspective. And then eventually, the more you get people to kind of stay connected, the more we see each other as resources, words start to spread. And next thing you know, it starts this open dynamic, but we're helping each other. So now, Connie, it's the first time I presented that. I see you thinking right now. Connie, what do you think about that? I mean, TR, was she on point today? Or
yeah, I think she's on point. I mean, I think that in the setting, it has a natural way of becoming the change, right? So if when I start, this is how I started, right? I just like student, I think natural attrition, right? People leave, they retire, all that goodness. And so imagine it may take some time for the tide to change, but at least introducing the concept of that cross-functional support straight out the gate, it automatically opens the door to, one, I'm going to respect your expertise because I don't know nothing, right? And then the more that I go to you for all the things corrections, I'm going to keep learning more, and I'm going to build that stronger trust and relationship with you because I've been paired with you. Hopefully, you're open to sort of taking me under your wing. And I think the same goes because as a civilian, my questions are probably going to challenge everything in corrections, right? Because I don't know, right? And so I remember starting new and asking a lot of questions, but asking from like a corporate space, from a like, this is how I would do it, like if I was at Citibank, right? And so I there were times where some stuff made sense, some stuff just didn't make sense for the environment. But having someone, because I had when I started, I didn't have like other civilians who were in my role. The role was brand new because it was the result of a court monitorship. And so I had to rely on custody to ask all my crazy questions, and they answered them, right? But, as TR brings it forward, that it's a two-way street, right? And that, there are civilians who may be able to, more seasoned civilians who can answer some of an officer's questions as it relates to treatment or programming or anything in that rehabilitative space. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I think it kind of adds to we need to see each other as a resource. And then through being that resource, you build that trust. It kind of comes to full circle of the dialogue. You're connected to this person who's now a resource. Also, they're a resource when you're most vulnerable, which adds another level of connection to that individual, right?
It also forces us to not assume negative intent, right? Like, which is really, someone new comes into this space, we don't assume positive intent, right? And I think it helps us kind of shift gears and see the person as the person first until they show us something otherwise.
Yeah, I like that. And guys, you know what I like about this too, though, is we connect to each other first before the inmates get a chance to connect to us.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how powerful that is. we get a chance to connect to each other first before the inmates can connect to us. I mean, that may be in my next book, because I think that's actually spot on. But again, this is something I'm sure we'll explore in future dialogues. But I think this is my effort, our effort, Connie and I effort, Tear Talk effort, whatever it is, to try to get this bridge. You have no idea how much it's needed. I know it's where we need to go. I know it's one of the milestones to giving corrections what it needs on that level of recognition that it deserves. And it's a milestone that's so hard yet so simple. I mean, it's just so hard yet so simple. Most of it is just us being stubborn in our ways. But the problem is most of it's us being stubborn in our ways. I mean, I said that twice because it's an obstacle. It's an obstacle. It's an obstacle that literally has set us back. I mean, again, when you see these events and everything's going beautiful and you see how we work together and it's just magic when it happens, then you got to ask yourself, if we did this every day, how far will we be? One thing is, and we kind of touched on it before, is that everything we talked about today was growth. We continue to grow, we continue to get better. And, the last thing we want to do is to do anything that becomes an obstacle to that growth. So I think that this dialogue, however many views, I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that we put it down first. So whoever decides to put this there 20 years later, I hope one of us is still alive, to go back. Yeah. But I just, hey guys. And the funny thing is, guys, it's what got me upset recently too is that corrections is evolving. It is evolving. And we're the forward thinkers. All of us here that are on Tear Talk, all of us that are part of this community, what we see happening and people saying, I didn't know. No, how did you not know if we knew? How did you not know if this was going to happen when we did a video about it 20 years ago? And you don't have to watch our videos if we're able to know. Because we're let me tell you something. Everybody obviously has different experiences in corrections, but when you think about it, we're just people that work in corrections that have experience, and we're kind of forward thinkers. We're not the only ones. And for the people that try to say when shit hits the fan that they didn't know about it, I find that hard to believe. Because if we were able to figure it out 5 years ago or 6 years ago, it doesn't make any sense why you couldn't do it then. You know why? Because you didn't make the effort, because you didn't care. So this video is based on the fact that we care. We're making the effort. And we're trying to hold people to the fact that, hey, if we know it, so should you. Therefore, there's no excuses. I'm sick and tired of, I didn't know. I'm ignorant to it. Nah, I don't buy it. Because if we know, come on, guys. If we know, it's you just don't want to admit you know. Connie, anything you'd like to say in closing, lovely lady?
I don't know. I think this one for me was quite thought provoking. Particularly because, we always try to figure out what could we be doing better? What could we be doing different to improve our environments? And, I think it's great for us to bring forward these tips and, put some of the ownership back on us as individuals, right? To break out of our comfort zone, to expand our expertise, because all of that takes effort, right? It takes us stepping away from the status quo. It takes us challenging what we do in our daily routines. And so, as I'm thinking about it, I'm hoping that, the audience is thinking about what could you be doing differently to help change or to help this industry we're in to evolve.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key. I think that's kind of what we're at now, the evolution of corrections. And one day, it's funny is, later on, this is more of a word of mouth business we do at Tear Talk. Later on, people will discover its greatness. It could be long after we're past. A lot of people that have been known for doing great things are not really remembered until long after they pass, because they left their legacy behind. And I want people to know that Tear Talk, the people on the show, the community, we're doing something great here. And we may not get recognized today or tomorrow, but we will. We will. Because no one's having these discussions. No one. But in the end, look at the motive behind these discussions. Let's make our people want to go to work. Let's make our people have value. Let's make our people know that what they do have importance. And I think that's a great message to spread. And today, the way we're struggling, it's a message we need to hear. Trust me. As always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time we pop up a video. Connie, personal question. What's your favorite cell phone?
My favorite. I got an iPhone 12, 13.
Okay,
12.
iPhone 12, iPhone 11. Which one was your favorite one, number-wise?
My favorite one. I have this. I don't know. I think I still like the home button.
So
I don't know that I like
anything, it. Six down or 8 down?
It might have been 8 down. I don't know that I'd go 6. The operating system wasn't so great, but I like having
iPhone 8.
Yeah, maybe. I liked having a home button. I don't know that I like it so much not having one now.
I like the iPhone 11. I like the camera function of 3 camera lenses.
Yeah.
I like it. I enjoy it. All right, guys. As always, stay safe.